So I took them there and I came back and I'm like, I love South Africa, like love South Africa.
And they'll give me a book title and I'll say, why? Well, why are you reading the book that you're reading? What are you looking to get out of it?
Like, oh, okay, you told me that you were going to whine and cry and want to quit at some point. And instead of me saying, yeah, you should, you're asking me to say, no, you need to keep going.
I went from back of the class, like scared to talk about those subjects, to leading those discussions after just one book.
Okay, friends, today I have the guest, Nick Hutchinson, in as an author who's going to share the stories from his book to help us make the most out of our time in the books that we choose to read. His book is called Rise of the Reader, Strategies for Mastering Your Reading Habits and Applying What You Learn. Drops November 1st, so that's why we're airing this episode now. Listen in and let us know what you think. All right, everybody, today I have Nick Hutchinson. I said that right? Hutchinson? Woohoo! You want to put an N in there and there's not. So I don't know why I like to add letters to people's names, but how are you today, Nick?
Jen, there's no place I would rather be. I'm excited for today's conversation and I'm out here living life.
I know you are living life. You wrote a book about living life and reading books and taking that to our advantage, which is why you're here today. So excited to learn all the things that you have to share.
Yeah, and we both have a love for travel and experiences while traveling, so we could dive into that a little bit. But yes, absolutely. My book, Rise of the Reader, Strategies for Mastering Your Reading Habits and Applying What You Learn, is definitely my newest focus, and it was so much fun writing it.
Okay, so where did the idea come from and what made it be that big of an idea that it felt like you had to write a book about it?
It's a long story, but I'll try to be brief with it. So I didn't grow up as a reader. I was more of the jock stereotype. I wrestled, I played football, I love going to the gym. And I took an internship going into my senior year of college, a sales internship. And my boss at the time recommended podcasts, just like this one. So I started listening to podcasts to and from my commute to work. And every one of these successful guests that were being interviewed, the people that I wanted to be like, they were all recommending books. And so I thought, well, there must be something that I'm missing out on because I'm not interested whatsoever in reading personal development books. And so I went to my local Barnes and Noble. I picked up a couple of good books and I was hooked instantly. Not only was I making more money at my sales job by reading sales and communication books, but I started to fix almost every single problem that I had in my life, remove every single insecurity by reading and becoming more educated. And so I would love to help other people do the same, take action on the information that they're reading in books, just like the one that you're launching in January.
Yeah, no, and I like what you're saying here about action, right? Because we can read a bazillion self-help books. We can become aware of things that we have weaknesses or should improve in our personalities or pursuits. But unless we put action behind them, nothing changes. It's the same.
Yes, 1000%.
Right. So what is your process? Because I know when I read books, I can stay motivated in the short term, but getting that to hold long term has been a bigger struggle. So how have you been able to say, okay, I'm taking this lesson, I'm integrating it, it's integrated, on to the next?
I have so many different tools and strategies for doing exactly what you're talking about. And I think they all start early in the process. And so not only do I love time blocking 15 minutes in the morning and 15 minutes in the evening for reading books, but I think it's very important to set an intention for each book you're reading. So Jen, so many times I'll meet people at a networking conference or out and about and they'll say, hey, what are you reading? And they'll give me a book title and I'll say, why? And they're like, dumbfounded. What do you mean, why? Well, why are you reading the book that you're reading? What are you looking to get out of it? I think unless we properly define our intention for each book we're reading, we're leaving something on the table. Because if you can set a strong intention, you're more likely to filter for the information in the book that can help you solve that problem and fulfill the goal. And obviously, when you have a clear intention and there's some emotion tied to it, you're more likely to take action on the information that you learn as well, because it's meaningful all of a sudden. And so when I set an intention, it follows the SMART goal framework, but we also add a little bit of juice at the end. So can I tell everybody a little bit about what that is in case they're not familiar with it?
I think we need to dive in.
Yeah. So instead of, like I said, reading a book aimlessly, I like to say, let's set a goal, a specific goal, something that's measurable. Did you achieve it? Yes or no? That should be clear as day. Something that's attainable, obviously. You don't want to read a book on personal finance and say, I want to make $1 million next year, if that's not in your cards. I like to write it down. So I say WR. That's kind of the R in my SMART goal framework. I like to write it down. It needs to go somewhere. And we can talk a little bit about accountability frameworks in just a minute for where you should write your goals down. And then it needs to be time bound. So you need to give yourself a deadline. You don't want to hike all the 7-second summits and just say, by the time I die. You want to put a specific time frame to it. And then at the end, when I'm setting up a goal, like I'd like to read this book and implement 2 things by the end of next week that meets the framework, you want to add because. You want to juice it up a little bit. Because I want to improve my life. Because I want to lose weight for this wedding next year. Because I want to earn more money, I owe it to my family. And if you can write that intention on the inside cover of the book you're reading and review it each and every time you read the book, you will fulfill that goal. You will find those couple of things that you want to implement. You will do it in the timeline that you said. And so when you ask the question, that's what my mind goes to, is like, nobody sets the right intention for the book they're reading. And if you're not doing that, you're leaving something on the table.
You're speaking my language when you're talking intention. I like it. Okay, so wait though. We kind of buzzed over the fact that you're a senior in college. You weren't a huge reader. You kind of had this story that want about books. You finally went to Barnes and Noble. You grabbed a couple books, and then all of a sudden it was a 180. Okay, what books made you do a 180?
Yeah. So what was so fun about that summer internship going into my senior year is that I had to clock in and out. So I had to be there for at least 8 or 9 hours, but I didn't have much responsibility and I had my own private office. So I'd finish my work in a few hours and I would shut the door and I would start reading. And the first book that I decided to read was Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. And that book transformed everything for me. Not only was it short, easy to read, common language, it had all these aha moments one after another, but it opened the door to other books. I mean, Robert Kiyosaki essentially condensed decades of information into days. And so I was somebody who was kind of insecure around money. I mean, I was a business student at college, but they don't really teach you personal finance. They don't teach you how much money you can make out there about investing. And so I went from back of the class, like scared to talk about those subjects, to leading those discussions after just one book. Like, how cool is that? So you're totally right. It was a 180, and it was all because of Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. Now, in that same vein, right after that book, I read Cash Flow Quadrant by Kiyosaki. I read The Total Money Makeover by Dave Ramsey. I read The Richest Man in Babylon by George S. Clason. All of them about personal finance and money management. And seriously, I went from like no language to all of the language instantly. And I just thought, wow, this is so cool. What other areas of my life can I do this for?
Okay. So do you have a favorite genre that you read or a genre that you stay away from?
Oof, good questions. I love all types of personal development, nonfiction style books. I think my favorite books are productivity books. I'm always looking to get more out of my time, to do more with less. And genres that I stay away from, I don't really read much in terms of like social issues or historical nonfiction. I don't read much fiction at all. Fantasy, those types of things are popular for people, but I'm looking to get the most out of the books that I'm reading. I'm looking to implement something from every single one of them.
Okay. What book are you reading right now and what's your intention?
I am reading The Honest Lie by Shane Baldwin. And he's a Utah guy. Like I mentioned, I just had him on my podcast recently. And my intention for this book, it's kind of funny, but it's to find 2 ways to better navigate the matrix. So he talks about the matrix as a societal construct, something that 99% of people are just in and they're not even aware of it. It's like a fish doesn't even know it's breathing water. And he says there are these types of awareness that you can find and implement to get a broader perspective of society, design a life that's fulfilling to you. So I'm going through the book looking for ways to navigate the matrix. And I'm having a really fun time with it so far. The first one that I've found is what he calls the honest lie. And what he's talking about is positive affirmations, something like saying, I'm rich, right? Like I might not be rich right now. It's a lie that I'm telling myself so that the universe can conspire to assist me in it. But it's not at the detriment of anybody else to say, I am rich and wealthy beyond my wildest dreams. It's an honest lie. So that's the book I'm reading right now. And that's the first takeaway from my intention.
I like it. We got to vibe what we want, attract. You vibe your tribe. Start talking the things you want to vibrate into your life.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, you're turning 30 in December. This is the first book that you've written. And I mean, I'm writing a book right now. It comes out in January. It is a wrestling match. I mean, there is a lot that goes into getting a book on paper and organized and all the different pieces. Take us through that journey for yourself.
Yeah, you are totally right. It is a wrestling match. And I'm sure your listeners will hear all about your journey on my podcast where we feature you as an author. I got a call about 3 years ago from one of my partners at the business that I run. They refer us business, and they're what's called a self-publishing services company. So you pay them, you go through the traditional publishing process, you get a finished book, but you own the IP at the end. And so that's what I decided to do. Well, here's the offer that she made me. She said, we'll offer our suite of services in exchange for an ad in the back of the book, if you ever decide to write a book. Now, I had a little itch because, Jen, I have a big social media community of nonfiction readers, and I have received hundreds of messages from people that say, hey, Nick, I'm reading all of these books, but I'm having a tough time translating the information into action. How do you implement the books you're reading? And I'd answer those questions with voice notes or maybe like send people to another book or something. But I knew that I would have to put pen to paper and really define the implementation frameworks that I use and then deliver them long form in order for it to be the most effective. So 3 years ago, I decided to start the book writing journey. When I officially started it, I was living in Medellin, Colombia. And so I would go down to the local coffee shops every day. I'd get some good coffee and I would just start sketching out like, what is this book going to look like? And so here we are, essentially 3 years later, maybe 2.5 years later. And it's been a process, like a really difficult process.
Now you have the marketing and the here's my book like world, come buy it. So it's crazy.
Yeah. And I'm so lucky because the company that I own, Book Thinkers is a digital marketing agency for nonfiction authors. And we offer all sorts of services related to book promotions. Podcast booking is one of them. And that's how I ended up connecting with you, Jen, because James on my team thankfully reached out. He saw your show. He thought it could be a good fit. And yeah, you're right. It is a monster. And there are 10,000 ways to promote and market a book. Nobody's really sure which are the best. And so it's good to get a blend of all of them. It's kind of a crazy world.
No, it is a crazy world. What one are you having the most fun with right now in your marketing process?
I love podcasts. I love having long form conversations with people like you about books, about how they've changed my life. And everybody asks different questions. Everybody has a different way to relate to what I'm saying, which I think is so cool. And so I know you've got your book coming out in January. What about you? What are you having the most fun with?
I'm not having fun. No, I mean, like, with a book, it really brings forth your perfectionistic personality types, and it's easy to get OCD on things. And so I'm very much trying to allow the process, yet hustle and decide, well, there's limited resources to bring this book to the world. Where is the best way to plug myself in and to utilize who I am as a person and the accomplishments that I had that I'm hoping inspire others to make the most out of their life. So I'm in the thick of it right now, still deciding what's the best way forward and what fits me and my lifestyle.
Yeah, it's not easy. The company that I have, Book Thinkers, we've tried 500 different ways to promote and market a book. And we've found 3 of them we're really good at and we can tie results directly to. That's short form content for social media, podcast booking, so having conversations like this, And then we've got a big book review community. And I think that those services work because we're super passionate about them. But like there are 10,000 other companies that offer different services. There's advertising through Amazon. There's all sorts of Amazon review companies. There are traditional media, so like radio and TV, and the list goes on and on and on and on.
Yeah, all of it. All of it, all of it, all of it. Okay, so I caught in your story that you were living in Colombia. I've been to Colombia a few years back, and then now you're in Boston. So there's some change there. Tell us about all of that.
Yeah, so I have visited 25 different countries over the last 5 years, sometimes for up to 3 months at a time. So I lived in Colombia for 3 months, maybe like closer to four if you include some other trips. And I love everything about traveling internationally. I think it's such a great growth opportunity. You're confronted with a language that maybe you don't speak or don't speak fluently, foods that you haven't tried before, experiences that you haven't participated in before, whether it's paragliding or bungee jumping or jumping out of a plane. Like I love all of that stuff. So as a personal development junkie, one way that I feed that is through reading books, listening to podcasts, which we've talked about, but I also love traveling. So Boston is where I call home. I was born and raised here, but I've lived in a lot of other states for periods of time. And I've lived in a lot of other countries, like I said, for sometimes up to a few months at a time. So yeah, I absolutely love it.
Yeah, no, I think travel is so important for us to define who we are and how we want to show up, because it just gives you visual cues and references of ways that it can be done. There's so many options. There's so many ways to do each day. And just because you're raised in one paradigm doesn't mean that's the only thing available to us.
Yeah, so many people go through life with the same routine every day in the same town for almost their entire lives. And you need to spice it up a little bit. You need some novelty. And when you're traveling to a new country, obviously, everything is brand new to you. And it's hard to replicate that feeling when you're at home. I mean, you can read a new book, listen to a new podcast, maybe strike up a new conversation at the local grocery store. But like when you are traveling, oh my goodness, literally everything is brand new. And so it's overwhelming, but you learn how to deal with difficult situations. And I think that's really special.
Yeah, no, I agree. Where's your favorite place that you've been?
Oof, good question. Well, I just got married.
Ooh, congratulations.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we did our wedding in Aruba. It's my third time visiting Aruba. That's a small island at the bottom of the Caribbean, for those that aren't familiar. And I love Aruba. And, it's where my now wife and I traveled for the first time together out of the country. And it's where we got married. So I'd have to say that Aruba is my favorite destination.
I get it. So I was in Bonaire in February to do a dive trip. The airplane oversold or had too much fuel or some problem. So they offered to bump us off. I'm like, yeah, sure. They're like, and it was a Saturday flight. And they're like, actually, the next flight we can send you on is next week, Wednesday. And I'm like, it's fine. We'll do next week, Wednesday. No big deal. They were paying enough money. Well, then when it was time to book us on next week, Wednesday's flight, they're like, just kidding. It's sold out. So you have to stay here till Saturday. I said, okay, that's fine. But that's a lot longer than Wednesday. I have 8 kids with me right now, but whatever. And then they were trying to figure out if they could fly me to Aruba, because there's so many more options out of Aruba than Bonaire, but they couldn't guarantee that the island flights would work, and then we wouldn't get stuck in Aruba and then all this craziness. So we just stayed the entire extra week, which was a bonus week on vacation, which was nice. But yeah, it is a beautiful part of the world over there.
What is your favorite travel destination?
I just went to Cape Town, South Africa. And I had heard about it. I'd met people from there before. It's kind of the beauty of I've traveled to all the continents to do all the climbs. And so you just meet people from everywhere. And everybody kept saying, you're going to love South Africa. You're going to love South Africa. I'm like, okay. My daughters wanted to go. So I took them there and I came back and I'm like, I love South Africa, love South Africa. In fact, I tried to convince the rest of my children to say, let's take a year sabbatical and go to South Africa for a year. I mean, this place is amazing. And I have kids that are in high school. Going on a family vacation for a year to a high schooler is not in the realm of cool. So we are staying put. But I pushed for a good solid couple weeks to see if we could get everybody to move for a little bit.
Yeah, that's somewhere at the top of my bucket list. I have a mentor. His name is Kevin Horsley. He wrote a book called Unlimited Memory related to reading and implementing information. And he's from South Africa. And so I meet with him every week, and he always has fun stories. And there's so much to do there. I can't wait to visit one day.
It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. Right. But let's get back into your book, because in our pre-talking before we started recording, which is why I want to get this back on record, there's all these things to shortcut reading to make it easier because everything's trying to be quicker and attention grabbing and blah, 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 blah. And one of those is Blinkist. Now, I've subscribed to Blinkist because I thought it was going to save me time and I thought I'd get more concept and ideas. But I realized for me, I don't need just the bullet points. I need the story in between the bullet points for me to have a place for that concept to land in my mind and actually be able to utilize it. What are your thoughts on that platform or platforms like it?
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of book summary platforms because they all try to replace reading books. I think something like Blinkist is a great discovery tool. If you can find a book based on a subject that you're interested in and go through a 30-minute condensed version of the book to see whether or not it's going to be a good fit and solve the problem you need, that's a great place to start. But I don't think it should replace reading the actual book because of what you just mentioned. There's one of my favorite books is called The Art of Learning by Joshua Waitzkin. He's a chess champion. He's also a mixed martial arts champion. He's mastered a few different things. And he says there's a form of learning called form to leave form or numbers to leave numbers. And what he's trying to say is that if you study a subject so intensely by reading the case studies, the stories, all the ancillary information, it can become part of your subconscious. Once it becomes part of your subconscious, you can implement the information almost on autopilot. Napoleon Hill calls it autosuggestion, but your subconscious can identify opportunities for you to implement the information, and you'll find yourself acting on behalf of what you read almost automatically. Now, that's not going to happen if you go through a 15 to 30-minute book summary, but it can happen if you read an entire book and spend time reflecting on it as you're going through it. So yeah, I just think you're so much more likely to take action if you invest additional time. You build a good intention, you go through the book with effective note taking, you rewrite your biggest takeaways. Oh my goodness. Blinkist doesn't allow you to do that. It's just a book discovery mechanism. And I think they have a great mission. I just don't know how effective it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I like what you're saying though, to use it as a vetting process, because books are commitments, right? They take time to read. And if you want to do it right and absorb the material and metabolize it all into your life, then you are setting intentions, you are doing reflections, you are highlighting key points and potentially rewriting them and how they fit into your story or how they apply so that it helps you get to the next level and actually use the knowledge that you acquired.
Yeah. I mean, you're cut from the same cloth if you believe that, and I know you do. So you're speaking my language.
I like it. I like it. So as you're helping people apply what they've learned to read with your formula, where do you see people getting tripped up the most? Like, where do you see people falling off the wagon with acting and making it happen?
Yeah, one of the steps in my process is to build an accountability group. And I think sometimes people struggle with that because they are the most motivated person in their friend group. And it would be an awkward conversation to start talking about personal development concepts or something like that with their best friends. And so, Jen, for anybody in your audience that's listening today, if you're having a tough time finding somebody to build an accountability group with, to meet with on a weekly basis, to talk about these subjects, about what books you're reading and how you want to implement something from them, I think there are a couple other places to find motivated people. Go to Jen's comment section on Instagram or any other platform and look at the people that are already following her, that are rooting for her, and try to have an introductory conversation with them. Send them a DM, introduce yourself. It's not that weird once you're already filtering for people who are motivated and want more from life. I jump on calls like this all the time with people who are total strangers just because we follow the same person online, or we're interested in the same books. And yeah, go into your friend group and look for people who have completed things like maybe a race, like a marathon, or maybe, some crazy challenge like the second summits like you did, Jen. And those are the types of people you want to surround yourself with. I know we've heard it 1,000 times, but I think cliches are cliches for a reason. You are the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. And if you can't have a productive conversation with the 5 people that you spend the most time with and invite them to an accountability group, I think you've got to consider changing your relationship with those people and bringing additional personalities into the fold. Because as they say, if you're around 6 bums, you'll be the 7th bum. If you're around 6 millionaires, you'll be the 7th millionaire. So whether it's 5 people, 7 people, 3 people, you've got to surround yourself with good people and change the relationships with those that won't want to work with you and rise together. Not every person in your family or in your friend group needs to be an accountability partner. They could just be a friend or a family member. But yeah, you've got to get out there. You've got to be pushed from other people because you will fall. And if you've got accountability partners that are there to lift you up and ask you good questions and push you in the right direction, you're far more likely to succeed, I think, in implementing this type of stuff.
Oh, agree 100%. Accountability helps. And then just making sure they know that they're in that role, right? It's having a discussion. Hey, I'm going to do this. There's going to be times that it's going to be hard for me. I don't want you to talk me out of it because I'll be talking myself out of it. I need you to show up and remind me of my why so that I keep going forward. I found when I tell people what I need them to do for me ahead of time, then when we're actually in the game playing, they know how to show up when I make the phone call. Like, oh, okay, you told me that you were going to whine and cry and want to quit at some point. And instead of me saying, yeah, you should, you're asking me to say, no, you need to keep going. This was expected. You knew it. I'm here to keep you on the right path. And then we make sure we call those people when we need them.
Yeah. And you know what? I act as that person for so many people, and I love every second of it because that's how transformation forms. I'm part of a really cool group, as I'm building out my book and my personal brand called Brand Builders Group. And one of the sayings that they have in their community is build relationships before you need them. And so just like you're saying, set expectations with the people around you. Hey, I'm going on this difficult challenge, or I'm looking to implement something from 100 books this year. And I might call on you. I might ask for additional accountability. Start to share that stuff before you need it. I think that's a really good lesson.
Yes, 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 yes. Well, that's a good lesson, right? Getting the people on the bus before you need them so that when you need them, they're there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like you go to put out a book and you're like, you know what? I haven't checked in with that person in 5 years, but if I had, maybe they could be part of my book launch army. It's make sure you keep relationships fresh, but also build them before you need them.
Yeah, definitely. Now, what's your theory on reading multiple books at the same time? Are you one and done, or do you have a few of them going depending on what mood you're in that day?
Oh, I always have a few books going. Sometimes that means a couple of paper books plus an audiobook and an ebook. I love to read through all of the different reading mechanisms, mostly physical paper books and audiobooks, but I like having multiple going on at the same time. There's actually something that I talk about in my book called book sex or idea sex. And the idea is that if you have 2 books on completely different subjects and you're reading them at the same time, if you journal about how to merge some of these ideas together, interesting things can happen. So let's give an example. Let's say that you're reading something on management and leadership, and you're reading a book on anything, intermittent fasting. Well, maybe by combining those 2 ideas together, you have an intermittent style of leadership and delegation where you bunch things together and you only do them once per week with your team. Like, I don't know, just any 2 random ideas together. And I think that's the fun part of reading multiple books at the same time, is that you might be the only person in the history of humanity to be reading, The Honest Lie and Why We Sleep at the same time. And if you consciously think about, well, how do you match these together? Oh, I've got to have affirmations while I'm going to bed or something like that. You never know what the right answer is going to be, but it comes up like there's so many ways to come up with fun ideas, new novel things that you can implement when you mash the books together and create book babies, for instance.
Yeah. No, I get it. I mean, it's like anything. You take an idea and then you mesh it into your current circumstances and make it work for you. All right. What are you learning from the book, Why We Sleep?
Well, I'm a huge sleep nut. And so I can talk about sleep for like the next 30 minutes if you want. I think a really interesting thing is that caffeine has a half life of 6 to 8 hours, depending on how physically active you are and how your metabolism works. Age, gender, those things play a role. But what I mean by that is if you have an afternoon coffee, let's say 2, 3, 4, 5 p.m., what you don't realize is 50% of that coffee is still flowing through your system while you're trying to go to sleep. Now, you might fall asleep just fine because you're exhausted, but you will not hit the deeper forms of sleep like deep sleep or REM sleep because that caffeine is still going through your body. So you're going to wake up in the morning having gotten your full 7 or 8 hours, but it's trash in terms of quality. And so quality and quantity both matter when sleeping. You might get a lot of quantity, but you're going to wake up in the morning with bad quality and still feel tired. So caffeine, do not consume it in the late afternoon or evening if you want to feel refreshed the next morning. That's a good lesson from Why We Sleep.
Got it. I also, and maybe this isn't the right time to ask, maybe you don't know the answer, but I feel like I've heard about sleep that if you go to bed before 10, you have more likely chances of the REM and the deeper sleep. And if you go to bed, like maybe after midnight, it doesn't matter how long you go to sleep, you're not going to, the 2 hours before count as like 4 hours. They're that much more powerful than going to bed later.
Yeah, I think that is true, and I don't know exactly why that's true what you just mentioned, but I have heard that before. I haven't read about that in this book. My guess is that for all of human history, we evolved, or whatever you want to call it, uh, without electricity, and so fire doesn't necessarily create blue light, which replicates what the sun does for our circadian rhythm. And so you could stay up after the sun went down, but it was dangerous to be up after the sun went down. And so I think we just evolved as beings that went to sleep within a few hours of there being no more daylight. It was dark in caves for a very long time, millions of years. And so, yeah, that's my guess is that naturally we're supposed to go to sleep and our bodies are best designed to go to sleep within a few hours of the sun going down.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And I know for me, if I get enough sleep, I feel like my brain went through a defragmentation. All of a sudden, I'm like, oh, I can restart and I'm fresh. I don't have random thoughts just still lingering that didn't get wiped out when my sleep happened.
Yeah, there's a crazy stat. It would take me a while to pull it up and find it, but if you are sleep deprived, meaning you're getting less than you're supposed to, which 98% of people probably fall in this bucket. Yeah, your reaction times are impaired to be that of a drunk driver, like while you're behind the wheel driving a car. So if you're drowsy, you're tired, then your reaction time slows down dramatically and you're more likely to get into a car accident. So there's all these downsides of not getting enough sleep and not getting quality sleep, and I think that's why that book is a mega bestseller.
No, I believe it. Well, and it's a popular topic right now, right? I'm more concerned about my bedtime than I am but concerned about my morning alarm. I feel like I win the night before. The next day, it's already happened.
Yeah, it's just like reading a book. It's like you have to set the proper intention before you open it up, and you need to go to sleep if you want to feel good in the morning, right? So I think one of the most important parts of sleep is a good evening routine, not necessarily a good morning routine. So I'm with you.
We're in. We're on the same page, 100%. All right, so this book that's going to help all of us read with intention and be able to put action behind our learnings so that we're integrating what we have invested our time into is available where, how, when, all those details.
November 1st, 2023. So it's probably out by the time everybody's listening to this. It's available anywhere that books are sold online, at least at first. And you can check out the Book Thinkers Instagram community. We do a new book recommendation every day. You'll definitely be able to find some information on it there. You can go to riseofthereaderbook.com to find out where it's being sold. And you can always shoot me a message, a DM through the different social platforms and that kind of stuff. I answer all those messages. And here's the thing that I believe. Books change lives. They really do. You can condense decades of other people's struggles into days of implementation so that you can bypass those struggles yourself. And we sometimes think, Jen, that like our human experiences are unique to us. But I think I saw a count over 100 billion people have lived. Millions of them have written books about their experiences. And hundreds of those books are probably going to provide a solution to the exact problem that you're facing, if not way more than that. So the resources are available for $20 a piece and for a few hours of your time. And yeah, it's tough that sometimes people choose not to read and implement these things. I'm like, it's just it's a question of effort.
Yeah. I mean, the resources are there. The gifts are all on the shelves, all available for free, even if we need to borrow them from the library and we don't want to own them ourselves.
Yep, absolutely.
Excellent. Well, I'm excited about this book. I will be buying a copy the minute it's available. We're going to air this episode so all of you know that are listening right now can go out there and order it, not only for the benefit of yourself, but it's important to cheer our authors on and continue sharing our stories, because in sharing our stories, we help others heal and become the best versions of themselves. So thank you, Nick, for joining us today.
Amen. Thank you, Jen, for being an amazing podcast host.